You know what I'm saying? Yep. And then when I live now. All righty. We want to welcome everybody back to another spiritual formation session with myself and Dr. Harvey. We pray that you all have been enjoying this time together that we've been having. And before we get started, I'm going to ask Dr. Harvey to lead us in a word of prayer, and then we'll kick it off.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. God, our great and remarkable God, we thank you for the week you have given us. We thank you for this day specifically that you have made. We thank you, God, that you have kept us this week amidst this world. And for that, we are grateful and we say thank you. We thank you, God, for how you plan to speak and move tonight. We thank you that you're going to allow this moment of conversation through improvisation to reveal wisdom and knowledge and to help somebody, God, navigate this journey of what it means to do spiritual discipline and to expand their spiritual awareness of you and themselves. We thank you for this creative possibility. And we believe that because of this moment and our yielding to this moment, we will all be better. So move how you're going to move, say what you're going to say. And we look forward to seeing what transformation takes place as a result. We believe this to be so, and we claim it to be so in that great name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So those of you who are joining us now, last week on spiritual formation, or really we've been talking about social distancing as a form of spiritual discipline. We had an amazing conversation last week, and we talked about how this moment of social distancing, although is a moment that has been kind of imposed upon us, the idea is, instead of feeling helpless in this moment, instead of feeling like we have no say in this moment, the idea is, how do we co-opt the idea of social distancing and make it a moment in which we really dig deeper into our own spiritual paths and spiritual journey? If I had to think of a word to capture last night, or rather last week, what we were saying was that the catalyst for this moment versus social distancing is to talk about solitude, right? I had to think about a word to use, solitude. And out of that, one of the things we came out with is this notion of that in this time of solitude in social distancing, which we're being intentional about, is that we should come out with new language, new practices, and a new way of seeing and understanding community. We'll cover some of those things from last week. We're also going to force forward into thinking about this week. So I'm going to let Dr. Harvey kind of set it off, and we're going to run from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, PM. So this idea of solitude, I think, is the right grounding for tonight. Because I've been wrestling with this idea this week around what is the role of solitude to inspire how you respond to moments of chaos and suffering. And I was doing some reading. I want to see where this lands with you. I've been reading this guy named Jay Nguyen, and he was arguing this idea of solitude and silence. He says, can often inspire or shape one of two truths. He said either your solitude results in you becoming like a stone in the midst of suffering, or your solitude can force you to lean into the cloud of possibility. So he says there's something interesting here, right?
Where repeat that line again. Let me hear that line again one more time.
Yeah. So in solitude, you either respond to solitude by becoming a stone, or you respond to solitude by leaning into a cloud of possibility. So he pushes this point, right, of like, in solitude, you're provided this invitation to determine that you're going to go into a fixed and stoic place, or are you going to take the more malleable approach of becoming a cloud, where you navigate whatever the space is and respond to the space? And so I'm wondering, like, how does that land on you? This idea of stone versus cloud, or is it to use stone and cloud, depending on the moment? Where do you see that kind of language pushing you?
Well, I look more towards the possibility, the cloud thing. I think that oftentimes, and actually, I honestly think that um, this coming Sunday, one of our pastors is going to talk a little bit about this. I
Okay.
think oftentimes when you see these moments that we're engaging in right now,
Yeah.
I actually spoke about this yesterday for a midweek motivation. These are vulnerable moments, right?
Yep.
And the problem is that our vulnerability is being forced upon us,
Mm-hmm.
right? This
Mm-hmm.
is not a moment where we make the decision to become vulnerable.
Yeah.
We have to be vulnerable. We're now coming face to face with our mortality. We're
Yeah.
coming face to face with our finiteness, our fragility, and people are feeling this sense of vulnerability, right?
Yep.
And so the thing is, with vulnerability, you can look at vulnerability either through two ways. You look at it through the lens of fear,
Mm-hmm.
which means you either rebel or you surrender and hide, or you
Yep.
look at it through possibility. You see what is there
Yep.
that can be gained from the moment. So I always land on the side of looking at these moments as a time of possibility. I was on the phone with my friends. Many people know Pastor Coleman from Oklahoma City. And we were having this conversation about social distancing and solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading this story about a prisoner of war during Vietnam. Before the war started, he played golf, right?
Okay.
And he said he was like a 15 handicap.
Okay.
But as a prisoner, one of the things that helped him keep his sanity was that he would play a round or 2 rounds of golf in his head every day.
Mm-hmm.
Now watch. When he got released from the Vietnam War and got back home and started playing golf, he was instantly a scratch golfer, which means that he knocked off 15 strokes simply by mentally going through the process.
Yeah.
Every day,
Yeah.
right? So if I look at this moment could afford me the possibility of leaning into spaces mentally, emotionally,
Yeah.
that I may discover, or as we'll talk about tonight, encounter
Yeah.
possibilities
Yeah.
in the act of solitude and in the midst of the social distancing.
Yeah, I think so. So that's interesting. So that helps frame this idea of Stoneberg's cloud, because you hit it. I mean, you hit it on the head, right? That he could have, though, taken that same moment and had a stone or stoic-like approach mentally, right,
Yes,
where he did not allow his mind to adjust to the moment.
Yeah,
I guess it's interesting because I'm wondering if we open up this things that often prevent folks from being able to follow the cloud of possibility.
Got you.
Right? Like, what is that thing? So I've been sitting with it this week, and I'm wondering how much of the thing that prevents people from being able to chase after the cloud of possibility is grounded in not having encounters when they're in solitude.
So let me see if I can frame this. So the idea that what hinders people from chasing the cloud of possibility or the possibilities that come in this moment is not having the encounter, and an encounter with, based on our conversation a little earlier, an encounter with the divine, which in many ways becomes a creative encounter, to use Thurman's language, with God and self simultaneously, right?
Sure.
So here, I'll throw this question back at you. If that is the case, if this moment of co-opting this social distancing moment and looking at solitude as a gateway to the creative encounter with God and self, the question then becomes similar to last week, a little different. And I'll throw this question in your direction. What are, as you think about it, some of the things that hinder, right, that encounter, or even not the encounter, the desire for the encounter of the divine and self at the same time, that lends itself to possibilities?
Yeah, so good question. I naturally go to, I don't even remember, Minister Heaven lifted up Keller in her sermon a couple of weeks ago. And Catherine Keller would argue that what can prevent us from chasing after these encounters with the divine is there can be what she calls a radical fear of the authentic that we run from. And we just connected to Thurman, right? So Thurman pushes us to pursue, and you know this better than I do, so I'll just touch it. The sound of the genuine, right? I'm gonna leave that there. But I know Keller pushes us to lean into this idea of what is it about encountering the divine within that radically paralyzes us. And she argues that we are often paralyzed by having to confront the authenticity that comes out of the encounter with the divine. And so I'm wondering if we follow the train of thought, encountering the divine within can be hindered by paralysis of the authentic, but it is the embrace of the authentic that gives room for one to believe in the possibilities that can come out of the moment.
So I'm gonna drop this one piece and we'll chase it, right?
Okay. Okay.
So the idea is that the creative encounter, and I'm gonna keep recapping, that the solitude lends itself an opportunity for the creative encounter with God, with ourselves, which ultimately means a creative encounter with our own authenticity. The paralysis of that authenticity comes not based on the encounter itself, but it's based on maybe the assumptions or fear connected to our authentic selves, right? If our authentic selves weren't terrifying, we would not invest so much time in the pretentiousness in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what we shared earlier, where you get to that notion of authenticity, what Howard Thurman calls the sound of the genuine, right? That each of us have that genuine, that sound of the genuine in us, which I would link to your statement. That sound of the genuineness of who we are is linked to possibilities, right? That is where the possibilities reside in our authenticity. But the issue becomes, what are the potential barriers that prevent us from these authentic encounters with self, which I believe hinder on our side the authentic encounter with God, the divine, right? So you have to then expand and think about, what are those things within me that are causing dread in me? From wanting to do this deep dive. And the reason why I link the divine encounter, human encounter, is because, staying in that Thurman idea, this notion that when we have conversation with God, it is the deep that is within us, that is God, engage with the depth of God. So as Thurman says, it's kind of deep calling unto deep, right? Which is really this kind of conversation we have with ourselves, with God. It's this kind of with ourselves, with God, with ourselves, with God, this same encounter. And it is not that God is not engaged in the conversation or the encounter. The issue is who within ourselves is showing up for the conversation.
So who within ourselves is showing up, and or what shadow of ourselves is showing up? So Plato is a friend of mine, and I'm thinking about the cave, right? You remember
the cave?
Yeah. And I'm wondering, so this idea of the cave is that these folks are in chains and they see a shadow of something that is bigger than what it really is. And because of that shadow being projected, they have fear paralysis. So I'm wondering if what comes with us is everything that is within that might be authentic to who we are, but also what comes along with that is a shadow that is often a bigger projection of the thing. And I wonder if I mean, there have been moments, I'm thinking of my own life, there have been moments in my own life where the reason I ran from the authentic, or ran from the encounter to inspire the authentic, is because of what was showing up in me. But I also ran because I put so much investment in the shadow of the thing that was in me that I made it bigger than what it really was in practice.
So let me ask this question.
Okay.
So do you ever defeat the shadow?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I would argue.
So let me ask that. Let me ask: do you ever defeat the shadow, or do you realize that the shadow is actually part of who you are? It is just not letting the shadow dominate, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I don't think you ever beat the shadow. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure I want to.
No, that's my point.
Yeah, there is something about the shadow coming along with me that is to some way humanizing and grounding. And I'm like 5 seconds of churchy, shadows.
I'm about to give you 7 seconds of church in a minute. So please go ahead.
Their proximity and their size is deeply connected to the angle, the intensity, and the heat of the sun.
Okay.
And so I don't want to run from it, because to some degree there is this connection of light. There is light associated with the creation of shadows, and to try to escape the shadow is to also escape the light source that is giving power to that shadow. So I don't want to run from it.
Yeah.
I want to stay close to the light in its own way.
Yeah. So I saw Alicia Gordon said that the shadow is elusive. I'm gonna say the shadow is not elusive.
Okay.
I want to say we choose to recognize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
If it is elusive, it makes the assumption that it's not present.
Yeah.
So it's not elusive.
Yeah.
It is whether we choose to recognize. So let me give you my 7 seconds of church.
Okay, go for it.
So here's my 7 seconds of churchy with the shadow.
Okay.
Right. I feel, and I think I've preached this years ago, I feel that those parts we call our shadowy side, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we ever fully overcome, because at some point it is part of the narrative of who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now, what if we now reconcile, I hate this language, I'll use it for now, till I can think something later. A relationship with the shadow,
okay,
where the shadow of part of ourselves is no longer a hindrance, but in some nuanced and creative ways, it becomes an asset.
Yes.
To the fullness of our identity.
Yes.
So let me show you an example. Now here's my church. I need to do my church. Here comes the church. Here's where the text said in the scripture in Acts that people were healed by Peter's shadow.
Yes.
Right? So this idea that somehow, right, that maybe Peter embracing and accepting that part of him that exists and was real, right?
Yeah.
That led to his denial of Jesus, his fear, his insecurity. For example, Peter, as Peter is portrayed in scripture, Peter is the spokesperson. Peter is the mouthpiece for the group. And in some ways, he's extremely boisterous. My contention is always when we see revealed in his acts of denial, and even at the end when Jesus engages that, Peter, do you love me? Is that much of that is a false bravado to cover up a rabid insecurity that resides within Peter. That same kind of rabid insecurity we all feel in some ways. That part could be viewed as a shadow, and the embracing that shadow is part of our narrative, but it doesn't dominate our identity, makes the shadow embrace a potential for healing. Why? Because if you can step in my shadow, but see the fullness of my identity, knowing that my identity is not hindered by the shadow, gives hope for people who shadow box every day.
Sure. No, that's real. So I appreciate that you lifted up Peter too, because here's what I'm wondering. So it's interesting when you go Gospels, fast forward to Acts, not one of my favorite books. Peter denies Jesus, goes pseudo silent for the rest of the Gospels in a way, shows up with a shadow healing people. To some degree, he went socially distanced for some chapters, and it was in his social distance from folks where we lose him. He comes back with power healing people. Preach.
Yeah, but I agree. But I'm gonna put two pieces in between that.
Okay.
Between the distancing and how he shows up in power through preaching and even in healing.
Yeah.
And that is one, the denial and the disconnection. So people, I hope people, those who are watching can grasp this. So Peter is the disciple who's seen, he's the rock, right?
He's the
And Peter
Yeah.
cutting off ears in
Yeah.
the garden. And
Yeah.
but when it comes to it, when he's close enough to see Jesus being brutalized,
Yep.
when he's outed as one of the disciples, he denies Jesus 3 times.
Yeah.
What Jesus already says he was going to do anyway. Peter can't accept that.
Yeah.
He does it. And so that's denial.
Mm-hmm.
Distancing then is what Peter chooses. So the distancing and disconnection is a choice he makes because of perceived failure. So I want to be clear, because there's a way where social distancing, what we're doing is reclaiming the power of the social distancing narrative, but not using social distancing in a way that Peter does, which is to disconnect.
Yes.
Because of being in that moment outed. Now, the deep thing is, he's not even outed in front of the other disciples.
Right.
He's outed in front of strangers.
Right.
But his being outed forces him to flee the space. How do you know? Because in one of the gospel accounts, when Jesus is risen, and the word to Mary is, go tell the disciples, watch this, and Peter.
Yes.
So in some ways, maybe the disciples have perceived Peter's disconnection, his distancing. Now, what now empowers Peter, and I hope folks can catch this piece, what empowers him to get a point when you see in Acts, these works, this preaching, is this encounter with Jesus and those questions. Do you love me?
Yes.
So here's where I hope we can get back, and I'm gonna let you run with this. Those questions, do you love me?
Yeah.
Right? Let Peter know that the way he may have distanced himself, the way he may have disconnected, and the way he sees himself is not of concern for Jesus.
Listen.
He asks, do you love me?
Right.
In other words, we still have a relationship.
Right.
So don't let your feelings of insecurity, don't let your feelings of disconnection shape, here it is, your cloud of possibility.
Yes. Turn you into a stone.
Listen,
that's real. So you just dropped something, this idea of, do you love me, as the paradigm question to make Peter have to re-engage identity. Gary Dorian says that when you are in moments of solitude, and we'll say social distancing, I'm going to co-opt it for this space, social distancing, moments of solitude and social distancing should push you, or can push you, to a place to accept acceptance. Right?
Yes.
Which means that Jesus's question, do you love me, is a question that pushes Peter to have to accept acceptance.
Accept. Hold on, man. You just said something. I got to write that one down so I don't forget that. So what? Oh gosh, I love these. I love these conversations because it pushes to accept acceptance.
Yeah.
Which now, let me put a pause here. Right?
Okay.
Put a pause.
Okay.
I'm gonna do a footnote here.
Okay.
I don't, because when I say this, if we don't stick to our guns, we can run somewhere with this.
Got it. Fair enough. Okay.
Which I will say, the aspects of Christian orthodoxy that are steeped, especially in this moment. This came up at TNT with myself and Reverend Keisha. It came up in Midweek Motivation. The part of orthodoxy that wants to explain crisis as acts of punishment or God's wrath.
Yeah. What
you just said reframes this. It may not be God's wrath we're talking about. And the reason why we always must look, not we, but church has looked, many people have looked through the lens of punishment, is because what Jesus frames for us in him teaching on this, and I'm using this word intentionally, this reimagined notion of God. What makes Jesus's teaching of this reimagined notion of God, to just use Dorian's language, is that we have a hard time accepting the idea of acceptance.
Yes.
Because what Jesus shows in the encounter with Peter is that the things he thinks forfeit him, where he forfeits access, is of no issue for Jesus. Acceptance is the order of the encounter. Now keep that there, because I can't counter language. So acceptance is the order of the encounter. Now flip this back to us, because someone just wrote that sometimes being alone in the shadow can be fearful, especially when you're encountering the aspects of yourself that are problematic, that lead to you being pretentious because you don't like it, and you always show up in inauthentic ways because authentic you is problematic. No, the authentic you is problematic for you, but it ain't problematic for God.
Yes. The authentic you has already been accepted.
Has already been accepted. Yes.
And that is the key to moments of social distancing that prevent them from becoming disconnection, right? Using this distinction, that if you are not careful, you will treat a moment of social distancing as an act of disconnection, because you will assume that the stuff that will come up, the shadows, are there to scare you. But to this point of Dorian, social distancing becomes an opportunity for you to have the time necessary to be okay with accepting your acceptance. Because Dorian pushes it and says, often what prevents us from accepting acceptance is not giving ourselves enough time to accept what we believe God has rejected. But he says, if you give yourself enough time with it, just give yourself time with your authenticity, you will come. I love how he framed this in one of his lectures. He said, you will run into the wall of knowing that I've already been accepted by God, which means the only step left between me and creative possibility is accepting myself.
And accepting yourself is then connected to you believing, right? You've been accepted by God. This is, so let me tell you, this is to me the struggle within Christianity. I know we're talking about spiritual discipline. This is important. This is part of the struggle within the framework of orthodox traditional Christianity. Because traditional Christianity, watch this. I get let's jump into churchy for a second, right? Would give us this feeling that the language, well, you need to get yourself together before you come to church. The old tradition, you can't take communion unless you right with God. All those other things that cause us to pause and think about what's wrong. Right? These things that cause us to pause and think about what's wrong. And the problem within Christian orthodoxy is that so not stay churchy. Let's go to Paul for a second. If we actually, and we know we love to use Paul in Christianity, right?
Of course.
If we actually take Paul seriously, in Romans, Paul actually says that acceptance is the point of departure. Watch this. What can separate you from the love of God? If people start there believing that nothing can separate us from God's love, right? That love doesn't give this rampant permissiveness. It is radical acceptance through love. That's why Jesus comes to Peter and say, do you love me? Do you love me? Good. So feed my sheep. Be about the work. Walk in your fullness of your identity. Live the life you were called to live, knowing that you're accepted. It then further biblically pushes us back to the scene of Jesus's baptism that takes place. Because remember, the baptism takes place before the ministry begins. And before the ministry begins, God says, I'm well pleased. Well pleased. So you don't have to earn it. It's given. Right? So
I'm wondering then, thinking about spiritual acts, sacred acts in church, and to connect this to discipline, when we baptize and when we commune, what it would look like to intentionally add language of acceptance in the water, right? Like, what What if this is an opportunity? And last week we said we would push all thoughts. What if this was an opportunity to even reimagining our formulas and our statements of how we take folks down or how we bless the table to ensure, to your point, that we're not centering it on what is wrong with us, but we are centering it on the fact that we have already been accepted. So at FCBC, right, we do it before they go down, right? I accept my status as an heir.
Yeah.
But what does it look like to take somebody down in the name of God, the Son, and the Spirit, but also to remind them either when they're down or when they go up, and God is well pleased? A reminder of the words that Jesus also got, that in this moment, we are not, I mean, because we love to, at least I grew up connected to the Baptist church and the Pentecostal church. We love to remind people that we washing it all away. Everything that is filthy about you is going down in the water. You're going to come out clean. But I'm wondering if I went down accepted and I came out accepted, and is that more important than me coming out clean?
Yeah.
Come out accepted.
Because Jesus doesn't come out of the Jordan clean, as dirty and polluted as it was.
Listen, facts.
But he comes out accepted. Listen, I'm looking at the comments, and Libby Ann Jackson has made a second comment about the framework requires, she said earlier, filthy rags, and Libby, you said earlier that believe you need saving. Now, I don't want to, we might save this for another spiritual formation.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Where we kind of, which is taboo for most churches, but we actually put traditional Christianity under a microscope. Now, that may be a 4-week class. That ain't a 2-week, right? That may be long. But I want to stick with your framework that you said, because that Libby says, because Paul uses the language of being saved. Paul uses the language of our righteousness is as filthy rags. These are not ways that Jesus refers to people.
Yes.
These are not ways.
Yeah.
In fact, the truth is that Jesus's language. So this is like some years ago, Sean McMillan came to church and preached a sermon, and he said in the statement that somebody needs to preach Jesus to Paul, right? so which was I thought that was good. But the thing is that what my biggest critique of Christian language is that we're not fully committed where we stand as Christians. So let me tell you what I mean. We don't steep ourselves in Jesus's language or teaching, right? I watched the broadcast this past weekend of two husband and wife team on television, and they were saying that, and this even sounds almost unreal to say, but was saying that COVID-19, I know a lot of people have said this, that COVID-19 somehow was a punishment because we've forgotten God, and that a punishment that won't rescind until we get in alignment. Now, once they said that, scripturally, they started bouncing from Old Testament to Paul.
Got it. Yeah.
Not one time was Jesus quoted. Not one time.
Yeah. Because
the image, the reimagined image of God that Jesus gives does not entail that. What he gives is this notion, is to go back to what you said, is love. This notion of acceptance. That's important for Jesus's work, especially in the region he ministers to poor, oppressed Jews who already have a self-view shaped by Rome. That always keeps them in a state of lack, needing, and inadequate. Jesus comes in and says, no, you're loved, you're accepted, you're loved, you're accepted, and God accepts you, right? So to come back to where we were before, is that somehow Jesus' teaching makes room for the encounter with God. And maybe that's the encounter he had where he felt accepted. And in the baptism, God says, you are my son, my beloved, and I'm well pleased. That was what was needed to activate the possibilities of his own work, that accepting that what he's accepted.
Yeah. No, that is so real. So this idea of the acceptance first that activated the possibility of the work is sitting with me. I'm thinking about something that Alfred Whitehead lifted up, where he talked about when you unpack this idea of spiritual discipline. He says that before you can get to the discipline part of spiritual discipline, you have to first sit with the word disciple in discipline. This idea of focusing on the disciple being the who piece, this idea of identity, where you are fine-tuning your hearing, sight, and feeling of oneself in relationship with God. And as you fine-tune the who, the disciple part of the work, then you activate possibility to do the work, to work wonders. And I'm wondering if we often set folks up in a way in traditional Christianity that this now gives people an opportunity to pause and step back on and say, before we rush to what we are doing and the impact that our doing is having, the discipline piece in the world, the what, does this give us an opportunity to fine tune the hearing, seeing, and feeling of our encounters with God as disciples? So in other words, how are we co-opting social distancing to be a better disciple first of the carpenter, and as a result of being a better disciple of the carpenter, then we will produce greater possibilities in the world. But can one produce greater possibilities if one hasn't done the work of becoming a more aligned disciple with the carpenter?
Yeah, I would say yes, because that phrase that Jesus says, greater works than these, he doesn't speak that to the crowds. He speaks that to those who made a decision to follow. Right. And that's important because, as I said, that means then that discipleship is that following is at the forefront or precedes the doing. Right. So I want to come back and frame this so those who are listening and grasping that last week we talked about solitude, because at the end of the day, this social distancing is actually affording the opportunity to co-opting this moment, to make it a moments of solitude, right? And then we're talking about, like last week, what can you emerge from the solitude with? Which is that what? New language, new practice, new forms of community. What we're saying now, last week, what you emerge with, and now we're saying what you encounter in.
Does
that make sense? Yeah. So let me just hit, so everybody is still with us with the spiritual discipline aspect. And what we're suggesting is that not only can these moments allow us to emerge with something new. Now, that new, we just alluded to possibilities last week of language, practice, and community, because the truth is that something new can emerge within each of us based on our commitment to the solitude and the willingness to do what we said last week, which is the introspection, right? Now we're saying that the solitude itself now also affords us an opportunity to have an encounter with the divine and with ourselves. So as long as we're clear there, right? This is for everybody watching. So the solitude, the social distancing, in which we're using that language now interchangeably, calling it solitude is taking back our power, right? So we have this encounter with the divine and with ourselves, right? Now, at that moment, as someone alluded to, when we're encountering ourselves in this moment, the fear rises, especially when we've been heavily invested in not being authentic. That means the encounter, or the moment of encounter that can come by way of solitude, the actual encounter will be avoided. Or if we have some kind of encounter, it is with another fabricated identity, which means the encounter will bear no fruit.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So now, in order for the encounter, here's what I think you're alluding to tonight. And if I'm wrong, tell me. In order for the encounter to be the birthplace of possibilities, means that one of the things we must do, according to Dorian, is accept that we're accepted. Is that right? Is that something I framed it right?
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the right framing. And so then it's causing me to say, if we do that, what can be produced out of the encounter once we've accepted acceptance? And Reinhold Niebuhr, I don't know how you feel about Niebuhr. What's your general take on him?
I like Niebuhr as his willingness to use his faith to engage cultural issues.
Okay, fair. That's all I need. Great. So I was reading Children of Light, Children of Darkness. And I got to the end, and something jumped out at me.
Hold on, somebody just asked to break it down again. I'll do it after this.
Okay, got it. So something jumped out at me that Niebuhr said, this idea of transcending, that when you give yourself permission as an individual to transcend the boundaries of community, roll with me, he says you also give yourself an invitation to experience for the first time freedom.
Say that one, to transcend
the boundaries of community. You give yourself for the first time an opportunity to experience freedom.
Yeah.
Part of me wonders then, if one of the products of accepting one's acceptance as a result of encounter is that one then positions oneself to experience a new dimension of freedom. The acceptance of accepting being accepted gives one permission to now navigate the world freely.
Yes.
And the question I want to throw at you to wrestle with, right, is, so then what does that freedom look like once one has accepted acceptance?
Yeah, I would back up a second.
Okay.
Because the freedom, well, let me back up for a second what you said.
Okay.
And then for those who wanted me to, and those who wanted me to break it down again, I'll do it after this. Once you accept acceptance, you said that there's freedom at that moment, right? And you're asking, what is that freedom to the therefore of the freedom, right?
Right.
Okay. So before we talk about the therefore of the freedom, is something that I want to push the folk who are listening. Accepting that you're accepted, because someone put a question mark. You're accepting that you're accepted by God. Right? I want us to just sit there. I want us to have like this moment right now, right? And I want us to think about this. I'm going to get to the freedom, but I want you to think about this. If I've spent my life being told that my entire being is to please God, so that there, in pleasing God, there is this notion of all of the benefits of God's happiness with me come my way. And when and I'm talking traditionally, displease God, all of the punishment that comes with God's displeasure is there. Now, what we're saying and suggesting in this encounter through Dorian's language is that you actually may discover first acceptance from God. Especially, I love that, because that's if you actually pay attention to Jesus's teachings. Now, embracing that acceptance means then, before I can even talk or move to freedom, there has to be a moment where I embrace the bondage that has just been broken.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because that, to me, there's some people, for example, who think you can rush into freedom still bound. Accepting that you're accepted by God, right, breaks those psychological chains that have you in this kind of always mode of fear, terror, and proving at the same time. Right? Yeah. So you have to allow yourself for a moment to continually remind yourself. Speak to yourself. Empower, encourage yourself to remember that your life is lived out from a place of acceptance, not bondage. And and before I can talk about the possibilities, because people want to live in the possibilities, but my God, the possibilities can't even become real if I don't know I'm no longer bound by a way of thinking that clips my possibility.
So it's interesting. Between then acceptance and freedom is awareness. Because this idea of between one and the other, before I even have the benefits of the practice of freedom, I like this.
I like your language, awareness. I like that language.
I must be aware, right? I have to be aware of the fact that I'm no longer bound.
And aware that I'm accepted.
So that's an interesting equation then. Accepting acceptance plus awareness of acceptance gives you for freedom.
Yes, that's if you look at our language around all in at the church, it's acceptance, awareness, acceptance, activation.
And that's it.
That's it. So in this sequel, we're saying, let's maybe flip something.
Okay.
Still the same FCBC equation. There is acceptance that you're accepted. And the awareness that you're accepted. And not being in a hurry to bypass the awareness, because to live in the awareness of acceptance, the awareness of it, and the acceptance of the awareness that's accepting that you're accepted, right, is a moment in which one radically departs from and negates the narratives that want to keep people bound in a way of thinking that is always easily manipulated by people who manipulate your fear and your feelings of inadequacy and your insecurity to control and regulate behavior. What we're saying is that when you're aware of the acceptance by God, think about that. When you aware, embrace, live in, live through, right? Here's what someone alluded to. The activation is filled with possibilities that are shaped by how willing you are to walk in that awareness.
It's giving me this stuff, connecting back to something we said, accepting acceptance, the awareness that I am accepted, then gives me permission to then activate my awareness, and I will know that my acceptance has been activated when I am living authentically without rejecting my shadows.
There you go. There you have it. There you have it. And
so now to answer my question, and then I'll know I'm free.
Then you know you're free because you're not bound by the shadow.
Right. They become my friend.
Boy, let me tell you something. See, someone said it's difficult to become aware without solitude. Let me flip that. Once you become aware in solitude, there's no need to be in solitude at that moment. Now you live out your life in freedom. And the solitude is no longer for the encounter, it's for the empowerment. Come on. See, Jesus doesn't go into solitude to discover himself. He goes into solitude for those moments of recharging.
Right.
The solitude in that moment of acceptance becomes self-care.
Right. Listen. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's self-care at that moment. So then something powerful happens. This freedom means like, oh my God, you can then tap in to spaces that your mind has not inhabited because your mind was shackled, right?
Yes.
So now, my God, what does the life look like? What does life look like now where, as you say, my awareness has given birth to my freedom?
Yeah.
In that, so instead of me telling you, well, here's what freedom looks like, because the minute I tell you what freedom looks like,
right.
I do the work of orthodoxy again.
Right. This is hitting now. Yeah.
Yeah, you get it now, right? So
Yeah.
so if I start telling you what the freedom is, I just negated what the encounter was to do, which is to begin a journey of discovery and possibility.
Right.
So this is where the traditional church has had a hard time, because the church wants to say, this is what true freedom in God looks like.
Yes.
The problem is as we've traditionally given it, what true, quote unquote, true freedom in God looks like has actually been a form of holding people captive. And not living in the freedom that God speaks. This is why Jesus can say, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty.
Yes.
There's liberty. And the way that Jesus becomes like the priests of old, when he then tries to constantly situate God, situate the possibilities, and situate the freedom in particular narratives that birth particular paradigms. So what do you mean? This is why when Jesus when he's asked very heavy questions that are connected to how he sees God, how he understands God, it's never, when you go through the Gospels, it's never a fixed understanding. The idea of the God encounter or the kingdom is always in flux. That's why my favorite thing I always tell folks, when Jesus uses that phrase, it's like. And what it's like changes. All the time. Right? So he's operating out of his own narrative of what that freedom is like based on his encounter. But guess what Jesus shows the way to do? To create what that like is for you out of the freedom of the encounter with God.
Right. I absolutely love that model, because where it grounds for me is the Acts encounter of Jesus's quote unquote departure from the earth, right? His ascension. Because it leaves the folks who are there to then have to do the innovation work for themselves. Moving forward. It doesn't say when I depart, it needs to look like this and function like this. The work, the innovative, the creative possibility is left to the imagination of the people who had the encounter with him.
And who had an encounter with him, and push it into our conversation. The creative, God trusts the creative imagination with those who know that they are always with God.
Because they had already embraced that they were accepted.
So let me give you a moment, a biblical moment. This is Old Testament one I want to give. I think I alluded to it. I don't know if I did, but I want to push this notion of when Samuel anoints Saul to be the first king of Israel. And there's a line there when we know that Saul does not accept this. This he don't want this position, right? He's being given the kingdom and he ain't with it, right? And he's like, nah, there's a line there where Samuel says to Saul that all the hopes of Israel rest on him. And Saul gets upset. Like, why would you say that to me? Like I don't want this, right? he stays with Samuel, and Saul and his servants stay with Samuel. The next day, that Samuel anoints, and then he gives him these signs, these markers that you'll know. What I'm telling you now, Saul, is so that you know that what is required and that this calling is yours. It gives him signs.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the signs, now mind you, this is important because Saul still, we know he's not convinced because in the scene after this, when it's the crowning moment for the king, Saul is hiding. So we know he doesn't fully embrace or accept the fact of what God is doing for him. But watch this, without him accepting what God is doing with him and through him, look at this creative moment, this permissible moment, this free moment God gives. He says, here it is. There's no major moment of fasting, tarrying. He doesn't say, pray and seek my counsel. This is what he says to Saul. Do what you choose, and God will be with you. That's that. So watch this. The notion that God trusts someone who is not accepted, that God has accepted him for this role. But still trusts to be creative. So when you fast forward to the act scene that you described, this is Jesus saying, listen, you live out what you've experienced. Live out this teaching. Take it to the places that I haven't. This is just greater things. And what? I will be with you. So this notion that acceptance, right? Accepting that you're accepted by God also means accepting the presence of God as you journey in freedom.
Which for me registers to say then, while I don't have the power to define what freedom looks like for anybody else but my encounter.
Yes.
But what undergirds all of our freedom, though, is that God is with us.
Yes.
So that I needed that moment. I don't need to know what it looks like or feels like or sounds like. I just need the reminder that regardless of what it is, God is with me.
Which goes back to something I've been teaching for years, so that faith is not about right decisions. Faith is trusting in divine presence. That's what faith is. Because we are afraid to make decisions along the journey that is steeped in freedom because we don't want to live with the consequences of what we would call bad decisions or bad choices. Which means then we actually don't move at all. We stay stuck for fear. It's like burying the talent for fear. It is like, what's going to happen if it goes wrong? Right? No. We're saying that we're alluding that you live forward, knowing that God is with you in that moment. If God, now I'm about to say something real controversial, but I ain't scared of that. No,
of course not.
How powerful is God if God can only be with you in your right choices?
Listen.
If God departs in my bad decisions, that means I actually control God's presence.
Can we lift up the Psalm text?
Come on.
If I make my bed hell,
come on, thou art there.
You are with me.
Come on.
That is so rich of a reminder.
Hold on, I'm up here rocking like the folks.
You can call it the mother's board rock.
I'm rocking, dog. I'm feeling this.
That is rich. That God's presence, God's abiding presence, is not predicated on right behavior. That is such a reminder.
But if you believe that and live through that, right? That means that you don't burden yourself of what happens with mistakes. You only live through possibility. And see, this is important because what stops me from living through the cloud of possibility is the fear of mistake. If I understand that the quote unquote, what we call mistakes are part of the journey of discovery and walking in freedom. That ought not hinder our progress along the journey, our work. Right? Then we'll stop looking at mistakes through the lens of punishment. So let me give you what that means. Go back to the scene with Peter and Jesus. No conversation from Jesus about the denial. No conversation from Jesus to Peter about why did you separate yourself from the disciples. None of that. Do you love me? I don't, Peter, you cannot be effective in this next season of your life if you keep on rehearsing the denial. You can't keep rehearsing the denial. I want to replace that space that you want to reserve for denial with love. Right? So somebody the other day in midweek motivation said to me, when I was talking about vulnerability, and they said, and this is real churchy, what I'm about to tell you. This is churchy and preachy. I'm about to get it. So they said, Pastor, but I have a hard time because doubt, they said, keeps running through my mind. And instead, and this is a moment where being preaching churchy actually helped me. Instead of trying to say, well, you know what do we do with the doubt? No, you know what I said? I said, well, doubt will run in your mind. Doubt runs in my mind. I just don't let doubt run by itself. I give it a running companion.
Listen.
So I'm gonna let doubt run with this love a little bit. I'm gonna let doubt run with my peace, my joy, my happiness. And what I do know is that the other part will win this race.
Listen.
Doubt can't defeat this joy and this love and this peace and this happiness. So that's why I count it. So instead of Peter, you thinking, letting denial lead your life, let denial be an episode, but love be fixed in your spirit.
Yes.
All right?
You know, it's interesting. Last week, you said, what are the new spiritual disciplines that will come out of this moment? I am wondering now if one of the spiritual disciplines that comes out of this moment is the spiritual discipline of accepting acceptance. The spiritual discipline of risk-taking and knowing that in risk-taking, your mistakes, quote unquote, mistakes, are also reminders of God with you. So we can add now to prayer, scripture reading, worship, stillness, humming, the discipline of accepting that I am accepted, the discipline of being aware of my acceptance, the discipline of activating my acceptance so that I might live authentically with my shadows, which as a result will be a reminder to me continuously that me and my shadow always will guarantee God's abiding presence.
Because watch this. God can handle my shadow.
And I think he actually likes them.
Hey, look.
In the beginning, right? He navigated shadow spaces.
Boy, look, you put the words right out of my mouth. I was about to say, and get real churchy, that if we take that the Genesis and creation scene, the way I think we ought to, God doesn't run from the abyss or dark space.
Oh no!
Watch this. The Spirit of God just moves over it, Doc. So the moves over it and creates out of it. Right. So your shadow. Here's the preacher. Your shadow may be a problem for you, but it ain't a problem for God. What your acceptance that you accepted does, and the freedom does, is to help you possibly create and co-create out of that space that you would call mistake. Come on. That's the point. And also accepting you're accepted and knowing that God's presence is abiding, which means with you. Right? Is the thing that helps you, watch this, not worry about what happens if a mistake happens, because a mistake can't negate God's presence. It also, knowing that God's presence is real, allows me to no longer be risk averse. Right? Because now I gotta go Bible again, New Testament, right? So here it is again. Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus has an obstacle. And the obstacle is himself. He's short. He can't get past that. I relate to Zacchaeus, by the way. He should. And he can't get past that.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, I'm short, therefore I can't see Jesus. I'm going home.
Yep.
He says the obstacle is not the people.
Yep.
Right? Because the truth is he's not tall enough to see beyond the people. Come on.
Yes.
Now use your language, Dorian's language. All he sees is stones, not clouds.
Listen.
Doctor, right?
Listen.
So what does he do? He goes up a tree and out on a limb.
Yeah.
So he's not thinking, what if the limb breaks? What if I fall off the tree? What is more important for him is to get a glimpse, a possibility embodied by Jesus.
Yeah.
So if your creativity and your imagination and the risk you take is to see the possibilities that abound, you don't think falling. You think living. You don't think what could go wrong. You're thinking what might go right. Even in the mistake I made, I learned something for the next phase of my journey.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is what separates Zacchaeus' act from Peter's water act.
Yeah.
Peter started risk averse. Here I come. But as soon as there was a moment that the wave became too strong, it removed the risk-averse behavior that Peter was living into in the walk.
Walking on water.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, Doc. Now you preaching to me now, because
and literally they both started with the same goal in mind, to see possibility.
Walking.
But
don't forget this line in the narrative. One line that shifts everything.
Yeah.
Because what do we, and I've taught this before, what do we often say? You know, we grew up in church, you grew up in college.
He took his eyes off Jesus.
He took his eyes off Jesus. He took his eyes off Jesus. The problem with that, for those of you who maybe never heard this before, he took his eyes off Jesus, and therefore he's saying, well, the problem was, if you look at the story, it was dark. He couldn't see anyway. That's why getting out the boat was an act of faith.
Yes.
So he never had his eyes on Jesus because he couldn't see. The
line, you said something. It was dark. It was dark.
Come on, don't do that to me, Don. It was dark. But watch this. Here's the line of story we miss.
Yeah.
And here is where living in acceptance and freedom and creativity and imagination blooms, because he sinks. Because here's a line. When he noticed the strong wind.
Yes. That's it.
He sank. Which means that in that moment, he looked at what was against him more than what was for him. What we're suggesting is that when you accept acceptance and accept that you're accepted by God, and with that comes this awareness of it and this freedom that comes with it, right? You realize this, the strong winds will always be there. Yeah. It didn't say the strong winds made him sink. He paid attention to it.
Listen.
So go back to Zacchaeus. If I pay attention to the I might fall narrative, it might not work narrative. Let's go deeper. They might not like me narrative. They may not get me narrative.
Listen.
What if I'm alone narrative?
Yep.
If you pay attention to those strong winds, you'll miss the moment.
Yeah.
With that acceptance of God, and living in the fact that you're accepted, blemishes and all, mistakes and all, is one of the most liberating,
yes, it is,
moments that a seeker can have. And that is at the heart of the encounter. Right.
Something is connecting for me, PM, between last week and this week. It is blowing my mind, and I'm going to say this and hand it to you.
Okay.
Accepting acceptance gives way for you to become aware of your acceptance, which then moves you to activate the acceptance to experience freedom, semicolon.
Say that one more time so I can get it. Say it.
Accepting acceptance moves you to then being aware of your acceptance, But you get to freedom by then activating the awareness of that acceptance.
Yes.
And when you activate the awareness that you have been accepted, you should then come out of that activation with new language.
Yeah.
Because now you should be using words that are lifting you up.
That are free words.
And free words. You come out with new practices. You become risk averse.
Yeah, come on.
You activate the awareness of your acceptance. And then you find new ways to do community, because you then want to surround yourself with other people who have activated the awareness of their own acceptance, because they give life to you staying aware that you're accepted.
Community with those, and the community that is birthed and drawn. Because let me tell you something. People tell you all they want. People are attracted to freedom.
Ooh. Listen.
Doctor.
Listen.
When you walk, boy, let me tell y'all who watch it. When you walk in your, this is why I'm not ashamed. People always say, Pastor's going to tell them I'm going to be transparent, I'm going to be vulnerable. You know why? I can be vulnerable and transparent because I know that that is a sign, as Brene Brown says, it becomes a mark of my courage, not my fear. So being vulnerable and transparent is an act of freedom.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When I can live out that way, in that freedom, there are certain things that can no longer inhabit my mind for long periods of time.
Yeah.
It will come, but I don't have to pay attention to them like the strong wind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That Mary says she running. I know she running because she really do run every time. I know you running, Mary. Run, Mary. Run. So
that is it.
Now this is good stuff. So that, see, all of this that we're talking about is what can take place in the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
The encounter with God Himself. Place in the solitude.
Solitude,
And the solitude is what I create out of social distancing.
That's it.
Can you imagine when people are going to baffle other folk?
Yeah.
Because and I'm gonna make it to those who are watching, that you will confound people when you come out of this season. And we don't know when it's going to end. We don't know how you come out of this freer than when you went in.
Yeah.
When you walk out of this season.
My God.
You walked in with chains.
Yeah.
But you walk out on the other side free. And that's only because you snatched meaning in this moment.
Yeah.
And found a way to channel the energy that is connected to anxiety, panic, and fear. And as we said last week, like our ancestors, you decided to steal away.
Yes. Thank you, God. Yeah.
Steal away and have a little talk.
Yeah.
With God. And maybe that's what the song, have a little talk with Jesus. Makes it right, Doctor. I think that's a way to understand this, man. This is good. This is good. Anything you want to add before we
listen?
Wrap up?
I know that that summarizes it. The only thing that is resonating in my mind over and over is one of your classic closes, which is this idea that He walks with me.
He
walks with me, and here's the acceptance. And He tells me I am His own.
That's it. Doc, let me tell you. See, now you about to take me in. Now when we sang it, and people sang that song, mostly tradition, especially our folk. But I remember hearing it as a little boy in the church I grew up in. And there was something about lengthening the and the he, Doc. We go, and he
right.
walks. Right. It was as if the lengthening of the and God was a space for awareness.
Yes.
Like, yes. God walks with me. And yes. God talks with me. And yes. God tells me I am God's own. That, boy, don't do that.
Listen, that and is so right. We got to go. That and is so rich, PM, because I think earlier when we talked about this idea of what we and others perceive as mistakes, I've made what somebody calls a mistake, and he still walks with me, and he still talks with me. I've made some moments that I would look back on and want to judge myself.
And God, now we're gonna preach. See, I'm trying not to do this.
And has so much power.
I'm trying not to do this.
Notice what.
Watch this, Doc. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The writer didn't say, but he walks with me.
And
it doesn't contradict what came before it. It's a continuation.
Don't make me do it. You're gonna make me do it.
That shouts me.
And watch this, Doc. So yes. I let's take people's struggles for a second. Yes, I battled with addiction. And God walks with me. God,
listen.
You know, I've wrestled with self-doubt.
Sir.
And
God walks with me.
God walks with me. You know, I've fought against my best possibility.
Listen.
And we keep running that. You can put watch this. You can put any act of your shadow in there.
Listen.
Doctor. And just make sure you put and on it, Doc.
Listen, that and.
Woo!
I love it. I love it. that right there.
I'm dead.
Listen,
I'm dead.
I need a good lace sheet and 4 steps of an altar so I can go down and cover myself up.
So let me put this out there. We're going. Let me just say it now. We haven't talked about it, but we're gonna. This is not these. What we've covered in these 2 weeks is taking social distancing and co-opting it and making a moment of solitude. That's stealing away. And we've also now let that solitude be the space of creative encounter. Right? I want to suggest this, that again, we don't know how long this will go. There'll be other spiritual formation classes that will come in the future. But I want to come back to this with Dr. Harvey.
Let's do it.
Because what we've talked about really is one discipline and reimagined it, which is solitude, which now in the encounter can give birth to other disciplines like risk taking. Like walking free. Like imagine when to walk free becomes a spiritual discipline, right? So here's what we're gonna do, family. We're gonna think about this, and how we shape this, and we're gonna come back to this. We have spirit, and you'll see the announcement. Spiritual formation will be coming in May 7th, I believe, and the 14th, I believe it is. I believe those are the dates. And after that, we're gonna look at a time where maybe myself and Dr. Harvey come back, maybe the end of May. Because the truth is, this is an ongoing conversation. Because if we ourselves live in that freedom, then possibilities abound for what those disciplines look like.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
So I think that's what we will do, and we will talk through this, frame this. I want to give a shout out to someone who's been watching. That's Reverend Alicia Gordon, who has done the work. Some of you saw it, I think, as a link, the notes from last Thursday, and I'm sure she'll generate notes from this. And as we continue doing this, I think we can actually take these notes over these weeks and really not only come up with, um, you know, I give an example. For years, people always referred to spiritual disciplines and Richard Foster, right?
Yeah.
I think we can come up with something along that lines that reimagines spiritual disciplines for those who are committed. And I want to use this language intentionally for those who are committed to following the carpenter. Doc.
Yes. Yes.
Who are more, here it is, who are more committed to following the carpenter than we are being good Christians.
Yes. Yes.
And what do spiritual disciplines look like for disciples of the carpenter?
Absolutely.
Are we gonna come out with this, Doc? This
love
that. This is gonna be it. So family, we kept you a little long. We've been trying to stick to 75 minutes, but this got gooder and gooder.
One more minute, it would have
oh no, we'd have had church in here, and I would have had to call Tamisha Charles Anthony to do a song or something, and we'd have gone in. But we'll know how to use that for next time.
There it is. Right.
Right. Okay, cool. So again, we want to thank all of you who've been tuning in. Clearly, we're going to pick this up during this time. And even when this is all over, we'll still stay here because this is something powerful. Yeah. This is what it means in this moment to really do the work of reformation, to reimagine language, practices, community. And those practices are kind of what we're talking about with spiritual disciplines. Yeah. So somebody said, keep going. No, we gonna
tonight.
Yeah, we gonna stop. My head hurt. And if I keep going, we're gonna both start preaching, and then I'm gonna run around the room with Mary. So bruh, thank you, Dr. Hahn, for these weeks.
Appreciate you, PM.
This is, we're gonna put the ... This is to be continued.
Yes.
We'll continue this conversation as we move forward. But let's close out, family, and I'll close us out in the word of prayer.
Right.
God, we just thank you today, and we honor you for this time that you have given us. Thank you, oh God, for giving us space, freedom to create, to reimagine, to journey, to discover, to encounter, oh God, to encounter you afresh and encounter ourselves anew. We are grateful, oh God, for this season. Even in the midst of the trials and the struggles, oh God, we're not grateful for the virus. We're grateful for how we'll co-opt the negative narrative and bring out something new in this moment so that the negative narrative and the fear and the panic and the dread of the moment will no longer write our story that we'll create in this moment, God. We thank you. We honor you, God. And at the end of the day, oh God, we know that what will move forward, that you will find the ways to get glory. As always, God, we lift up those who are mourning now, the loss of friends or the loss of family. And then those, oh God, who are mourning the loss of a way of life to this point. But, oh God, remind us that we ought not fear, because as we learned this past weekend, we can rise wounded. We love you, God. We honor you, God. And it's in your name we pray. And we say, amen. Listen, family. Yeah, Doc. Appreciate you, man. Peace and blessings to everybody. Let's give a hand, Dr. Harvey.